Good evening. Welcome to the Gin and Tonic show on this Friday, the 11th of May, 2018. I was going to say 2018. Good evening. We have a nice panel this evening, and we'll have somebody else joining us a little bit later. So good evening to Stops, to Abu, to Steve from Speaker's Corner, and Raj from Speaker's Corner. Good evening, guys. How are you guys all doing?
Good evening. Oh, good, thanks.
Good evening.
Stops has gone away, I think, to go and get tea or coffee, so he will be back in a few moments. So we've got plenty to chat about tonight. We haven't got too many crazy comments. I'll do a couple of them now, a couple of long ones, just so we can see, as always, just to keep us entertained, but it shouldn't take too long. Then we'll talk about Sharia. So Stops in particular and Abu will give us some thoughts on Sharia. We'll ask some questions, have a discussion, and then we'll get into talking about the Freedom Day that happened this past Sunday. I think there's plenty to talk about there. So without further ado, let me present this to everybody. And here's the first crazy comment of the evening. I'll make it a bit bigger and then we'll go through it. So this crazy comment comes from the vegan guy that we had on, from the, I think it was last week's show, wasn't it, where we did the critique. Good evening, Sarah. I hope you're well. We're just going to read some crazy comments here first. So we did a critique, for those who remember, I think it was last week's show, if I remember correctly, with Shabir Yusuf. So here's the comment from, this is the vegan guy that had that conversation with Shabir. Hey, Gin and Tonic, I'm George, the guy from the video. I was made aware of the video in your channel by a chap at Speaker's Corner last Sunday who came up to me and told me about it. Absolutely loved your masterclass critiquing of Shabir's debating tactics. You're absolutely right when you say you can be unaware of his game the first time you're debating with him. After seeing your analysis, it was completely opened my eyes to his sophistry, which I have to say I was unaware of while arguing with him. At the time, I just thought that he was going on a bit of a tangent because he didn't really have a point, which of course is true. But I was unaware of the underhand tactics that he was intentionally using to try and undermine my argument because he didn't have one of his own. To address some points, questions you guys had in the video regarding veganism and the use of animals. With regards to honey and the good treatment of bees at certain honey farms, I must first clarify that veganism is not about treatment of sentient creatures, but rather against the use, exploitation of them in any way at all. As it is now, 2018, we completely have the means of avoiding using sentient beings as property. We promote the concept of moving past using sentient beings for any purpose. In any case, bees make honey for themselves, not for humans, and if they were okay with us stealing the fruits of their labor, we wouldn't have to wear those outfits when we went into the hives to steal it. So taking honey from these wonderful creatures is always an act of cruelty, especially as we have alternatives. We could always debate that if he comes on. I have actually invited him to come on at some point. One of you mentioned that sheep are not harmed for wool, while again the concept of veganism is not necessarily to do with harm, but more to do with use exploitation. It is a myth that sheep and lambs are not brutally harmed in the wool industry. Please see Why Don't Vegans Buy Wool question on this page on my website for more information. Keep up the great work. I thoroughly enjoyed the video. So for those who want to, obviously, if George wants to come on at some point, I've said it, he's welcome to come on. We then had either Shabir or Shabir's colleague or whoever this commenter is. And so this was a response. We hope you are fine, George. You're entitled to your opinions. It would be better for you to admit in this post that you had no logical, rational, and reasonable response to Brother Shabir's position and still do not, just like the individuals who critiqued this video. It is hilarious that what is hilarious, is that even the critique required an independent yardstick, which they did not have. We do congratulate them, Gin and Tonic Show, on their effort, but it was like listening to primary school pupils trying to understand advanced mathematics without a teacher, and the result was, well, you were well aware of the laughable excuses of the individuals in the team of Gin and Tonic to avoid having a discussion because they respectfully terrified intellectually. And so the next best thing is to massage their egos, our opinion, which can be rebutted, to indulge in critiquing and even that they respectfully botched up.
Well,
so first Sorry?
What did he try and say?
It's kind of laughable, and we didn't have a yardstick.
Yeah, but so the next best thing to massage their egos is to indulge in critique and even that they respectfully... What the hell?
Yeah, it's not always entirely a smooth reading. So I just responded to George firstly. I said, hey, George, thanks for your comments. If you'd like to join us and discuss veganism...
Sorry, guys, give me 10 minutes. I'll be back. Sorry, give me 10 minutes.
Cool, buddy. No worries.
Sarah.
Cool, no worries. Come when you're ready. we can make a plan, although we would like to relate it back to Islam in some ways. That's the overriding topic. So if George wants to come back, we could do a show on veganism and how it relates to Islam, and we could always chat to him and challenge him on some of his views if we wanted to. And then I said, the second part of my comment, George, you'll also notice that Shabir's channel, All Truth Revealed, continues the same sort of tactics as Shabir does in Speaker's Corner. You clearly put forward your yardstick, which Shabir flip-flopped on multiple times, and ironically, he was unable to support any sort of yardstick himself. Both he and this commenter hope dream that if they continue to throw out the word yardstick, that will absolve them of any responsibility to put forward an argument. But as you saw, that won't work with us. But and I screenshotted this before actually. But if that is supposed to be, but if Shabir dares to come on the show, we'll happily deal with him. But that is highly doubtful. So that's the sort of little bit of an interaction there. So nice to hear from George. I was surprised to get so obviously All Truth Revealed is watching the show. So again, we are now live. If you All Truth Revealed commenter, or if Shabir wants to come on here, you're welcome to come on and we will have a conversation here. I don't get down to Speaker's Corner as much now, and some of my colleagues here on the panel are in different countries, but we're quite happy to deal with you on this show if you are prepared to come on here. Let's go with the second comment. This is the only other one at the moment, and this is one that Stops gave me. So Stops, please, if you could read this and give us some context. Over to you, sir.
Okay, I will try and keep a straight face. Now, this is a reaction to a video where I am critiquing somebody else's video, okay? And this is now somebody who doesn't like what I do in the video. So he says, that's precisely the point. No one knows who Speaker's Corner Analyzed is, which is me, or gives a fuck who you are. So why would you even mention you got attacked? Now, in the video, I make reference to somebody saying that Muslims are basically very peaceful people. And I say, well, unless you take the ones who attacked a civilian hotel in Kabul. And so he says, why would you even mention you got attacked and make a point of saying they were Muslims when what they did wasn't Muslim-like, nor was it relevant? Well, it was very relevant because they're bombing the place to pieces, shouting and screaming Allahu Akbar and firing off RPGs and five guys running in with AK-47s, and it's very relevant. So if they were white guys, would you have said you were attacked by Christians? Now, I never mentioned that these were brown people, black people, green people, or anything. So I was not racist at all, but this guy is pretty racist because he thinks Christians should only be white. So not very Christian-like or Muslim-like behavior are either of these incidents. Buddhists are killing the Rohingya. Is this the Buddhist teaching? KKK? Are they representatives of Christianity? Oh my God. If you didn't have the balls, now remember what I just said, what happened there. I mean, we had the bloody army there. We had helicopters. We had the whole tutti there. If you didn't have the balls to fight back these guys, nor the brains to call the police and tell them to check CCTV.
Stops, when you do stop laughing, and at the end of this, please can you tell people what happened? Because they won't know how serious it was and how lucky we are to have you alive. So,
well, this was two suicide bombers who went and blew themselves up to gain entrance into the hotel because there were 5 meter high solid metal doors at the entrance. It was like a sleuth. So you had to go through the first door. The car was checked, open the hood, open the bonnet, open everything underneath the car with mirrors and blah, blah, blah. And only then was the second door opened, and then you could go inside the premises. There was also one of these airport things where you had to go through, you had to open your bags. And this is every single day that I had to go through there. So I felt relatively safe in there. And then these guys had 2 suicide bombers. They had RPG, rocket-propelled grenades, which killed the outside Muslim security guards. Then the security bombers came in and blew up the doors. And then the rest of the people ran into the building firing AK-47s all the time, screaming Allahu Akbar and yelling and blah, blah, blah. Now, I was downstairs and I just managed to duck behind a pillar. Now, the pillar is like 3 meters wide, so I could duck behind this thing, so I wasn't hit or anything. And unfortunately, the guy who just given me my room key, he was one of the first guys to die. And he was a Muslim. He was a lovely guy. His wife had just given birth. I mean, I lived there. for several months. So I knew all the staff, I knew all the people, because I'm a nice guy. So, people talk to me. And because if you stay there longer, you get to know all the staff there. And they just killed them. And then a guy tells me to check CCTV. And he says, that's my fault. Okay. Tommy Robinson, whose real name, Stephen Christopher Langley, or another lies Paul Harris something or other, this seems to be important for this guy, okay? Invented the name Tommy Robinson to hide behind it, but to have two names that vote for him as leader of his own organization. That's why Tommy Robinson came up with the name. So he has two more votes. Unbelievable. And of course, he receives funding from Zionist Israel, and that stinks, as most people know what the Talmud teaches and what they stand for. Even the Bible condemns gays and lesbians because it's unnatural. Penalties are a deterrent, and only someone really stupid would go ahead and commit that sin. I mean, you have to commit that sin, but free-minded people know better, right? You can take a life in the West, then get rewarded with a place to live, free food and drink, TV, PlayStation, some prisons. Okay. People in the free world go too far. That's why you, so-called free thinkers, sleep with your sons and daughters, mothers and fathers. Just because you could do something doesn't mean you should. Sex is for pleasure, sure, but main function is that of reproduction, especially with your father. How on earth you can think it's normal and okay for a man? Now, this guy has amazing and amazingly intimate knowledge of gay sex. So I wonder where he gets all that experience from. For a man to mimic animals and let another fuck him up the arse and then turn around and suck it. Now, I didn't know. I mean, I don't know very much about gay sex because I've never tried it. But he seems to be very experienced in it. I don't know. Then you have the nerve to call others thinking primitive. And then there's two videos. I didn't even bother looking at them. But this is the level of comment that I'm getting on my videos.
Yep. Well, that's it for the cranny comments. Only two longer ones this evening, so we won't. I'm sure we'll find more in the coming week. Cool. So let's move on to Sharia, and if we can start with your self-stops. I'll just bring this up and just tell me if you agree with this. Is this in fact correct? So I'm just picking this up and I'm presenting this to everybody. Do you agree with this sort of first bit here? Definition of
Islamic laws are made up of No.
Islamic laws are made up of Sharia and the Islamic jurisprudence. Sharia
is
seen as sacred and
a little bit different.
Okay.
No, Sharia is a development. Okay, there's no such thing as a book called Sharia or something like this. This is fluent. It's a moving thing. So what we need to do is we need to let's start at the beginning. What happened is we had Islam and we had Islamic law because it is a political ideology after all. So people need certain rules as a guideline according to which they can live. Now, what didn't work because of the specifics of Islam, a lot of the rules that they took from the Jews didn't work for them. So they had to create their own. So now what happened is they took some rulings that they got from the Quran and some rulings they got from the Sunnah. And then what they did is they used the individual teachings from that to find analogies for certain words, for certain rulings and practices. And this was then supplement. So you have the source. As a source, you have the Quran and you have the Sunnah. Then you have the process of analogy where you are looking for teachings found elsewhere to rule for an existing situation that you have at the moment. And then the fourth thing that you have is then the ruling of the individual, let's call them scholars. Now, this is different from fiqh, the actual jurisprudence, because the jurisprudence is based on what humans go and say, like a fatwa is may be based in Islam, but it's a human ruling. It's an interpretation based solely on what humans are saying. Sharia, which, well, etymologically sort of comes from different things, from the law or from just justice, or some people say it comes from the path or the path to water, things like that. This is the part that Sharia is never allowed to contradict the Quran. That's the number one rule that you cannot have. Now, the problem is that we all know that the Quran is not very precise, not very specific. So what they have to do is they have to take the hadiths, but the hadiths and of course the biography are not very specific either. They contradict each other. So wherever the hadiths then contradict the Quran and vice versa, and then both are contradicted by the biography, you then have the ruling of the people. Then you have this so-called ijma of the scholars, who are then developing a consensus on a specific ruling that you find in the Quran. So let me make an example. For example, the highly contentious issue is, for example, gay sex, or things like that, or stoning, where you have different rulings in different regions, which we know as the madhabs, and you get a ruling which is based, number one, on the Quran, number two, on the hadith, and then number three, on where a specific word was used. And then you put the ruling of a certain deed up for discussion, and then you say, okay, this is the punishment, or this is the reward, or whatever you're getting. If you have gay sex, this is why you have the differences in some rulings, where some, and I can't remember, I think it's the Hanbali which are saying, okay, you need to throw him off something, and the Hanafi are saying, no, you don't. And then so there's different rulings.
Wait a minute.
Do you know exactly which is what?
The Hanafi, I'm not 100% sure now, but from the top of my head, I think all of them says that you should kill them.
But some say through beheading, some say through throwing off a cliff, some say off a high building. So there's different ways of killing the people depending on the lewdness of the act.
Yes. So I remember that Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen, he talks about this, like, what is the correct ruling?
Exactly.
And I don't remember exactly what every single madhab says, but I can shake it up. But
it's not important. It's just that it is different. And this is the point that we need to understand. There is no such thing as ruling in Sharia. Now, Sharia just means Islamic law. Okay, so to say Sharia law is a bit stupid, but it's people are using it. Did you just start throwing up or what?
No. I got I don't know what to call it in English. Okay. Like when your muscles
cramp.
Cramp, exactly.
So if you have Sharia, all that it means is that this is the ruling that is derived from Islam, that is derived from the Islamic text, that is derived from the interpretation of scholars who got together and decided that this is what we need to do. So, for example, the wife beating is also a contentious issue, because nowadays Muslims, I mean, as we know, are better than their God, or most Muslims are better than their God. So they try not to beat their wives. They try not to kill others. They try not to keep slaves. They try all these things, and now they need to somehow substantiate that with the ruling of the Quran and the the Sunnah. So what they're trying to do is they're trying their best now to say, well, wife beating is actually not meant in the Quran. What is actually meant is that you're supposed to separate from them, or you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. So there's a lot of hum and hooing around this. So Sharia is something that is changing over time, depending on what it is that you're trying to achieve. But it's still a couple of 100 years back compared to what we have today in other more developed countries.
But this quick one on the beating stops. Does it not say in the Quran to beat your wife in every English interpretation?
Well, those are the old interpretations. That's what I'm saying. This is the way that it was intended. This is what you read. It doesn't matter whether you Ibn Kathir or Jalalain or Maududi or whatever. All these guys will agree, yes, that's what it means. And it's a logical sequence, okay, to them. And this is what you still see enacted today in many households. But because Muslims today, most of them anyway, are better than their God, they're trying to get away from it. And this is why they go and they say, okay, well, no, it's actually not beat them. And then they come up with the toothbrush and the miswak, the stick. And then they suddenly say, well, no, actually you're supposed to separate from them because it's more logical if you already separated from them in the bed to then separate from them completely, i.e. get divorced from them. So this is the way that it works.
But the interpretation of the word beat, is there another interpretation of, because they
Oh, sure, you could do anything you want.
Okay, so that Islamic word, whatever it is, I'm sure Abu knows it as well. That Islamic word that means beat, they now are they attempting to reinterpret that word beat to mean something that is not beat?
Yes.
Yes, they are tempting, but that is kind of silly.
That doesn't matter.
فَضَرِبُوهُنَّ.
And the huna is always to scourge or scourge.
No. Hunna is her, them, is them in female form. Fadrib or fa is so. Idrib is beat, you command them to beat. And the funny thing is that word is used in other verses, like when God says to Moses, "Fadrib bi asaq al-hajar," and beat the stone with your stick, with your walking stick. So it's used.
So it's exactly the same word that's used. Yes. So it's very clear the context and meaning of this word, especially since that exact same word is used in other verses.
Mm.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
But they try and bend it. And this is what I'm reading in the chat now, that people are saying, well, he's not 100% sure. Correct. This is exactly what this is. We're talking about Islam. We're talking about the Quran. There is nothing 100% sure in the Quran. Okay?
By the way, I think that 100% sure is that I don't remember every single ruling from the top of my head. Maybe some years ago.
But even then, the point is there is nothing in the Quran that is, I mean, it's not for nothing that I call the Quran vague and ambiguous. Everything in the Quran requires interpretation. So how can you be 100% sure about anything in the Quran when even a word like beat suddenly is being I mean, remember my big example of chapter 4, the Nisa, the women, and sentence number 3, where even in the corpus, you can see that it says wa, which is and. On the right-hand side, it says and, because the word means and on the left side, if you look at the continuance of the words, it says it's or. So you can make anything mean anything else. So and or are interchangeable according to Muslim apologists. And if you wanted to, if you listen to them long enough, it can even mean submarine. It doesn't matter. They can do anything they want through mental gymnastics, through mental masturbation, and that's it.
Can I just say, like, this thing with throwing off the roof? I want to complete that thing. There is, it's the reason why there is so much ikhtilaf about that is that the exact execution is not like directly
prescribed.
There's no direct hadith or anything that described it. Therefore, there is room for ikhtilaf here. But all of them says that they should be executed, but how is the ikhtilaf? And the Al-Uthaymeen says that the correct answer is that the ruler of the country decides what execution. So if he chooses to throw them out of high buildings, that's correct. And if he stones them, that's correct, and so on.
Okay, so the point that I was trying to make is Sharia is not equal Sharia. It can be a lot of things, but it should be based on Quran and Sunnah, and then whatever ruling the scholars give it. And this is what Sharia is. This is why Sharia is not used in the UK, for example, according to a penal code. They're only using it for family law, I think, where they are saying the ruling, because remember that in Islam, it's very specific that a woman, like if you have a daughter and a son, the daughter receives half the inheritance of the son, and they will still argue this today, and they will still say, well, it's fair because the woman gets to keep everything, she can spend it on makeup or whatever she wants, where the man has to take care of the woman and he has all the responsibility and the financial burden, so that it's only fair that he gets more than the woman. And they will still argue this today. And that is the way that it works in Sharia, that the Sharia is then used to convey the wishes of what is found in the Quran and the Sunnah. But because they are contradicting and because they are like whatever you want, we saw this with the example with the inheritance, they are still bending it according to what they want. And then poor sods like Muhammad Hijab don't know what to do. He goes to the elders and they say to him, well, we have our own ruling according to whatever madhab you're in. But he doesn't realize that he is then contradicting the Quran, and this is then the problem, and this is why it's so embarrassing for him.
So because some of the, and I'm sure some of the guys will say it, some of the Muslims, as you said, at Speaker's Corner, want to sort of sanitize Sharia law. And is it possible, Stops, in any way, or Abu, is it possible that some Muslim could sanitize it to the point that they go, hey, do you know what? Sharia law is as good as secular law. I mean, is that in any way possible?
Well, it's done.
As in, like, if it took over here, if there was a majority of Muslims here and Islam was the majority view and they introduced a Sharia, could they introduce a Sharia that is basically indistinguishable from our current secular views, our current secular system?
No.
Oh,
There are
that's
some basic things which stay. I mean, I could basically, I would.
Cool. Well, okay. Could you give me the things?
With equal rights, you will never have equal rights.
Okay, cool. So between you and Abu, could you tell us the things that, no matter whether you were the most amazing apologist that wanted to make it as close to Western civilization that could be palatable for Western people, could you tell us the things that would be incompatible, that we would all consider incompatible with Western values today, that they would have to include in Sharia law?
I mean, you can look at there are examples like in Indonesia and various places that you can look throughout history what has happened. So like even on like the Hamas rule in Gaza is kind of a good example, that they are not 100%. Now I'm using that word again. They're not using 100% of the Sharia all the time, but there are certain things that they always have some kind of punishment for adultery and things like that.
Exactly.
Okay, but Muslims, see, what Muslims will go is, hey, when I speak to the apologists down in Speaker's Corner or elsewhere, they go, hey, in all these Muslim countries around the world, however many there are, 56, 60, whatever the number is, they're just not doing Sharia right, quote unquote. If they did Sharia the way I, as a Muslim apologist, would want to see it done in some idyllic world that doesn't exist at the moment, then it would be just amazing. And you guys, then it would be better than secular views. That's the sort of Sharia I want for you guys to give me the most charitable view that you could, that this sort of idyllic Sharia might look like, and how would that differ from what we would accept?
No, you can't. The point that they're trying to make is because at the moment we're living in a secular world which is based on rules made by humans. Okay, so a human can never know what a human or what is best for the human, because we are just, indulging our lusts, and this is not the way that we should be living. We should be living according to God, because remember, in Islam, everything is to the likes of the God. We are being produced with a purpose, and that is to worship God. Now, God creates us and knows best what is good for humans. And this is why you should live according to the wishes and the whims and the rules and laws and everything of this God. That this God is an incompetent fool, a bumbling idiot, doesn't really know what he's doing. And if whatever you find in the Quran, there's nothing that is correct. There's nothing that you can use there. It doesn't even tell you how to worship, where to worship, why, and so on and so forth. So all the basic tenets that you have in Islam are not being conveyed in the Quran. So you need humans, like we saw in the inheritance. Whatever you take in the Quran, it is faulty, it is wrong, it is erroneous, it is inadequate. And so you need the humans at the end of the day to apologize for this God and then make up for all the mistakes that he makes. So there is no way that you can argue this in any which way. All you need to do is you need to take women's rights. Human rights, they don't exist in Islam. That's it, finished. You will never have this in an Islamic ruled country under Sharia. You can't. The same as sex. You will never have equal rights for gays. It's impossible. You cannot have that.
And what about the punishment for apostasy? Because, of course, what I hear again is,
okay,
hey,
that's different. No, that's different. This is a very worldly law because you are committing treason. This has nothing to do with God. What you are doing is you are rejecting not only God, but you are at this moment in time working against the country, against the nation. So you are deceiving your own country. And this is treason, and therefore it should be capital punishment.
Right. Okay. Because they often say that, hey, it's okay if you become an apostate, just don't go share it out in the public sphere where you can influence others, and by influencing others, that's tantamount to treason. And they want to compare that to what we do in the West.
Sorry, wait. This is a good example of what you see in the Quran, because in the Quran it says yes, you should kill all apostates, but it also says if they turn around and then work against you. Now, what this working against you is, or becomes your enemy, or if you are fighting Allah or something, that it depends on your interpretation of what this fighting is. If you are an enemy of Allah, does this mean you have to go there with an AK-47, or does it mean you simply say it's irrelevant what this God says? Which is it? So again, it's down to interpretation.
Yeah. All right. So can you, between you and Abu, then just summarize the things in Sharia that would have to be implemented? So assuming that Muslims or Islam became the majority in some Western country in Europe, for example, which is probably likely less than the next 100 years, what would we see in terms of Sharia that would have to be implemented, even if they had a moderate Islamic government of some kind?
But look, it's a bit... Look, just because they become majority doesn't mean that they still will be Islamists. You see what I'm saying? Maybe they will, but that's also, you can see, for example, if you really have a devoted, believing population where most of them are Muslims, like in Saudi Arabia, then you will have a bit more extreme versions of Sharia. And when you have like maybe, I don't know, what's the percentage in Indonesia?
Of what?
Of Muslims versus...
Well, it depends what you call a Muslim. I mean, because you have like 80% Muslims, but you only have 20% of Muslims.
Yeah. But there is this region where they are...
Oh, Banda Aceh.
Yeah, and they have a slightly... It's still not a nice version, but it's not as bad as Saudi Arabia, but it's still not nice. They have this religious police that are walking around. So it depends on, there's many factors, like how the level of their religiousness and the level of, and like how are they 60-40 or are they 70-40 or 90-40? You see what I'm saying?
Okay, cool.
And I mean, there are many Muslim countries today that doesn't have a real Sharia.
Yes, yeah.
Like,
I just wanted to sort of get a little bit of clarity for myself and for the viewers as to, what Sharia is and how might it be implemented, because obviously we can look at other countries in whatever way it's implemented in other countries to see what sort of examples have been implemented in other countries. And when I speak to some Muslims, they often, respond back, but hey, Saudi Arabia or this country or that country, they just haven't implemented, they've either implemented the wrong version or not done it correctly or overdone it or some kind of response. And hey, if we implemented Sharia correctly here, it would be better than, English secular law or the English secular society. That's the sort of response that I often hear. Raj and Steve, do you want to add anything else in? By the way, Stops and Abu, do you guys want to add anything else to the Sharia thing?
No, not on this.
Not on this. Okay, cool. Is there anything else that you guys want to cover, Stops and Abu, in terms of Sharia?
No,
not really. No, it's just a summary. But we need to understand that Sharia is not something that is tight or written down or something. It's fluid. It's flexible. It can't contradict the Quran apparently, but even if it does, so that's basically it. So there's no such thing that says Sharia is equal to that. You cannot say that. It's not that Sharia is equal to cutting off hands or something like this. You can't say that.
Well, I mean, it is written down, but there is many much ikhtilaf in different issues.
Interpretation.
Yeah, or differences.
Yeah.
But they.
Are you saying, though, let me just check in with both of you. Are you saying that if a version of Sharia was implemented, let's say in a Western country, could the punishment be not chopping off hands? So if somebody steals something, they could decide, no, we'll send you to prison. We could implement some of the secular punishments as we see fit.
Yeah, in short, yes.
Right.
Yeah, it's possible. There's even a story of Umar ibn al-Khattab that there was a famine when he was the Khalifa, when he was Amir al-Mu'mineen. And because there was a famine, he didn't execute the cutting of hands. So they can, in that case, it's easy to find an excuse.
But in certain things, as you pointed out earlier, there's some things that they really can't, like inheritance and certain other things. So certain things there could be some leeway on.
They can always deliver some kind of mental gymnastics, but like the more religious they are,
with human rights, you cannot suddenly allow sex with unmarried women unless you go and marry them for an hour. Yeah, okay, but you're still married, so you can't just go and have girlfriend and boyfriend the way that we have it in London or something.
Yeah, that's very unlikely. But I mean, that's also like you have to differ what is unlikely.
You can't have equal rights for women. You can't have a woman marrying 4 men, and you can't have now people eating pork. Those things are out of the question totally.
Okay, so there's two things here then, just to sort of, as we come to a close on the Sharia part, there's two things. One is what you're allowed to do, and the other is what are the punishments if you transgress these certain things.
No, in Islam, everything that is not forbidden and not explicitly prohibited is allowed.
Yeah. Okay. But those things that are prohibited, if I understand you correctly, what you are saying is that different punishments can be implemented depending on the authority that's implementing Sharia.
Not to everything, but to most things.
Okay. So okay, to kind of finish off then, could you foresee, is there, how do I phrase this? Is there any possible world, to use that sort of question, where Sharia could be even comparable to Western secular laws or our society?
No.
Okay. That's the main sort of point I wanted to check in, because no matter how a version of Sharia would be implemented, we in the West, with the current secular system we have, would never accept certain parts of it. So it would always be, to use a term, worse or not as good as our current secular system.
Come on, it's based in the 7th century. What do you expect?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify it in as clear a way as I possibly could.
Yeah.
That there's no way because some people could potentially, some people that haven't even listened to us or know any of these sort of things could be potentially hoodwinked into thinking that a version of Sharia is just as good as secular views here, and in fact better because it would prevent, drinking or certain other things. And so obviously certain points would be pointed out that I know some people have very much liked about Islam and has been a contributing factor for them converting. I know a couple of people that have converted, and one of the things they said is, oh, well, I like the fact that if, in a Sharia state, drinking would be outlawed. And I think drinking is bad. And, that's part of the reason I'm converting to Islam. It's not the entire reason, but that's one of the reasons. So
the problem is it's not prohibited.
Okay, well, assuming that it was, and assuming what they said was true.
Yeah, but this is the funny thing. It is. I mean, come on. When, for example, I was in Doha when they built the Pearl, okay? Now, when this was opened, they said, well, we have Allah's law, on Allah's land. But the pearl is man-made, so we're going to have man-made law on the pearl. So they served alcohol on the pearl. But then, of course, the people went apeshit, and then they got totally drunk. So they had to stop this again. But it shows you the hypocrisy of the system in Islam, where they are saying, well, we have man-made islands, so we have man-made law on the man-made island. It's like it's childish.
So in order to be consistent, then you'd need something more along the lines of a Saudi Arabia, where it's much more strictly implemented. And there isn't that sort of, okay, Can
I give a comparison? Like, say that... look at, for example, the American Constitution. Like, there is a more plausible interpretation of the American Constitution, and then you can, if you're prepared to do a lot of mental gymnastics, you can just completely overwrite it by your mental gymnastics. And this is the same way with Islamic sharia. Like, there is a more plausible interpretation, and that is more close to the Saudi Arabian interpretation, although I don't think they're perfect. I think actually ISIS are closer, or were closer than Saudi Arabia in many ways. But the more sincere the Muslims get, the closer they will get to the ISIS/Saudi Arabia style, because they will have a sincere reading of it.
Right. Okay. I'm with you. Yeah. Cool. Any more thoughts, or shall we move on? Anything else? No. Okay, cool. Thank you for that, guys. I appreciate that. So let's move on then and talk about the Day for Freedom, or Freedom Day, however you want it. Day for Freedom, as I'm looking at it here.
Every day is Freedom Day.
Exactly. For those who don't know, if you've not heard about it, which most people here have, but if you haven't, there was a Day for Freedom organized by Tommy Robinson primarily, and there were many invited guests. And this took place this past Sunday, the 6th of May, if I remember correctly, in Whitehall, which is essentially outside Downing Street, which, for those who don't know the UK, is basically outside the Prime Minister's residence, similar to the White House, just not as fancy. And so there was a big march that happened there. Steve, what is it, about 5,000 people, give or take, that turned up?
To be honest, I mean, I've heard all sorts of numbers quoted, from 2,000 up to 40,000. I personally think it was probably approaching 10,000.
Wow. Okay.
That's sizable.
That is, that's pretty significant. Which is, pretty amazing.
What did the BBC say?
The BBC said absolutely nothing about the whole event. They were silent on it.
They said Tommy is a racist.
Right. So what I'll do initially is I'll just, so if you guys give me, hopefully not too long, maybe 10, 15 minutes, I'm going to go through some of the things, because obviously there were my thoughts. I'm sure some of you will disagree, and then I'll turn it over to you guys, because I've got some of the tweets up here as well. So I'll give some thoughts. The reason I'll sort of start out is because I have invited, just for people who want to know, I've invited Ali Dawah multiple times on Twitter. I've invited his cameraman Saeed. I also asked Saeed, because we are friends on Facebook, to pass on the invitation to Ali Dawah, and I suggested he's welcome to come onto the show tonight, and he could put forward his response or rebut any of the things we're going to say. So before anybody accuses us of not inviting either Saeed or Ali Dawah, then that's not the case. I'm going to now go through sort of a chronological series of events as I see it, give some of my thoughts. Then I'm going to turn it over to the panel. They can disagree with me, they can agree, and I want to get their views, because obviously we've got Steve and Raj who were there on the ground. So there may be some things that I say that they can, correct me on. I've obviously watched a number of the videos, and I've kept an eye on what many of the people were saying. So I'm certainly open to being corrected, but I'll give my views initially, and then I'll turn it over to the panel. So without further ado, I'm going to present this to everybody. So just starting here as an example. So I can't find the tweet for Ali Dawah, who asked to be allowed to come to this event. But here is Ali Dawah responding to Lauren Southern, who was banned. She said, if you believe in freedom of speech, let me upload a video of me drawing Muhammad on your YouTube channel. Ali Dawah said, and I can't see the date on this. Oh, there it is, 5th of May. So that's the day before the Freedom March. I believe in freedom of speech that is productive, not hate speech, which is unproductive. Don't get it twisted. Peace from the UK. I'm using my freedom of speech to speak out against your hate speech. So clearly, if you are rational and you understand things, Ali Dawah does not believe in free speech. He believes in limited speech, in the sense that hate speech is not free speech. But according, for the rest of us here who believe in free speech, we don't believe hate speech is free speech. So what Ali Dawah is really saying is, hey, I believe in limited speech. Now, his original tweet, which I cannot find, I've been looking for everywhere, basically said, he was asking Tommy Robinson, etc., hey, allow me my freedom of speech and let me come and speak on your stage at your freedom of speech event. Stephen, you can correct me if I just can't find that exact tweet. I was looking for it all over the show, but it was very much words to that effect. So this is my first point. I think that's a hypocritical statement in the following sense. Ali Dawah does not believe in free speech, and here's an example. It's very clear that he believes in limited speech. Now, if Ali Dawah was honest and had some integrity, he would have said, hey, I believe in limited speech, but I would like to come along and use your free speech platform to talk about why I believe in limited speech. Now, clearly, if he had said that, everybody would have seen that immediately as being hypocritical. So unfortunately, he worded it differently. And then if we look in the next tweet here, Lucy, who is or was Tommy Robinson's one of Tommy Robinson's staff, invited or confirmed that Ali Dawah was speaking at the Freedom Day event. And presumably, and I think this was a mistake on her part, because it's a hypocritical move. The whole event, as far as I can tell, and again, Stephen Raj can confirm if I made a mistake, my understanding of this event was an event where every single speaker that was invited, whatever else they disagreed on, they agreed on freedom of speech. So they did not agree with hate speech. Every one of them agreed on this. So the point of having these people on the platform was to show that there was a diversity of people that had different diverse views, but they all had the same view around freedom of speech, which Ali Dawah did not have. So firstly, it was hypocritical of him to ask to be on stage, unless he had put it in the honest way that I think he should have, which says, hey, I believe in limited speech, but I want to make use of your free speech platform. That would have at least been an honest request, but clearly that would have been blatantly hypocritical, and then they probably wouldn't have allowed him. So the first mistake in my view was that Lucy allowed him to come on. Now, lots of people have said, hey, actually it's fair. It's a free speech event. Allow Ali Dawah to come and say his thing. That's why I disagree, because yes, he's got his free speech. Nobody's denying his free speech. What should have happened is they should have denied him a platform at an event where the entire event was focused on people talking about why freedom of speech is important, which he does not believe in. And that's very clear. And he obviously had his speech that he would have done, which would have said exactly what he said, which was about hate speech. So it's clear he believes in limited speech. So that was the mistake that she then made.
Well, Rob, can I add on to this? Because I think she's naive, okay? People don't understand the damage that somebody like Ali Dawah can do, because people are not used to the lies and deception that these guys bring out. They are not used to the things that they will say, the things that they will just state, they will just claim, and they will say, well, you see, because in Islam everything is different, and therefore you can't do that, and therefore it is good to have a certain blah 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 blah. And he is going to lie through his teeth, and people will not know that he is doing this. This is why we have this problem with, I think, the leftists, who are just indiscriminately accepting everything that comes out of the mouth of somebody like Ali Dawah if he's only saying it nicely. And this is why I get so abrasive when people tell me you're not allowed to swear, you're not allowed to do this, because they are more looking at the format than the contents. And this is the problem that I have with Ali Dawah and those people, and with hijab, because they are able to phrase things that they sound nice, but they are vile. And this is why they don't understand the damage that somebody like this can do, because people will not understand how much of what he is saying is a lie.
Ameen.
Yeah, well, so I will say it's similar, as in I think, yeah, it was a mistake that Lucy made to invite him. But be that as it may, the mistake was made, and obviously that can't be taken back.
Yeah, but Rob, we need to be. I think we need to be honest as well. We can't just say, well, he wouldn't have been, honest in saying free speech and blah blah blah. I go a step further and I say, there is no way that an idiot like this should ever be allowed to speak at an event like this, because he is going to do more damage than anything else. And this is, I am very, very vocal and very clear about this. And I do not apologize that I am curbing free speech at this moment. I am curbing free speech, and let me make this very clear, not as an institution, but as a speaker in this private event.
I mean, it's not like if they would have say that on the May Day, some kind of radical communists, would they invite a free market libertarian to speak on May Day? Probably not.
Well, that's kind of the point. And so here's where I might disagree with you, Stops, I might not. Had the event been, hey, let's invite people who believe in free speech on the platform, and let's invite people who do not believe in free speech, and let's have a kind of a free-for-all and each one can do it, then I would have supported his right to do that. That was not the interpret. That was not the so that was not the idea of the event. It was not to have people who disagree. Otherwise, you could have said, and quite rightly so, hey, invite the Antifa people on, or anybody else that thinks that's Nazis, and you can't say a thing. Then you would have been entirely within your rights to say, hey, I don't believe in free speech entirely. Please, can you invite me so I can give my view? But that was not my understanding anyway. And maybe Raj and Steve, you can chime in here. Is your understanding as well that this was an event for free speech advocates only, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this whole event was organised in Tommy Robinson's name. So therefore, you know, like you said, any other protest, demonstration, gathering of speakers, it's always going to be controlled by the people that are organising it. And as you just said, you know, the thought of you know, some far left-wing gathering allowing someone of a right-wing voice coming to speak is, you know, absolute nonsense. Every gathering is always controlled by the people that are organising it. And the fact that the subject is free speech, in my view, doesn't change the fact that the organiser has the right to decide who is going to speak and who is not going to speak. You know, and at the end of the day, this was a huge gathering. It was an iconic location in Whitehall, outside Downing Street. You know, if my name was being connected to, you know, if my name was backing this whole thing and I was the person that was behind it, of course I'm going to have some interest in who's speaking, because it will be on, you know, it will be on my watch if something goes wrong. It will be on my watch if something's said that's completely in contradiction of the overall message that's being given. So I think, you know, the unfortunate thing behind all of this is that, you know, George, Kaylin and Lucy, they were the actual organisers of this event that was in Tommy Robinson's name. All three of them did an absolutely fantastic job, and I think it is really unfortunate that Lucy is really being hung out to dry on this online, because she was an equal contributor, as were George and Kaylin, and they pulled off what was, you know, one of the most impressive protests, gatherings, speech, you know, group of speeches that I've ever seen. But the one unfortunate thing is, I think the reality is that, yes, we know Lucy gave an invite to Ali. Clearly that had not been approved by Tommy. He turned up on the day thinking he was going to speak. And you know, his name was printed up on the menu of all the speakers. I think he was due to speak before Shazia Hobbs. So, you know, it was a cock-up, but I think it was miscommunication. And now this is giving, you know, the likes of Ali and his mates, you know, they're just enjoying the fun of making mayhem on this and saying, oh, look at you guys. There was a miscommunication. There was a bit of a cock-up. But, you know, I was aware that he was due to be on the bill beforehand, and I did actually advise them, I don't think it's a good idea for him to be allowed to speak. For a number of reasons, but you know, they kept on with it, and I think it was only on the day when, you know, Tommy said, you know, this is absolutely not happening, because they were still trying right up to the last minute to allow him to speak.
What reasons would you have?
Say again?
What reasons would you have
for not allowing him?
Yeah.
Two reasons. I think the one reason that you were all discussing a moment ago, that, you know, he is not an advocate of free speech, which would have made him polar opposite to all the other speakers. You know, the other speakers did come from an array of backgrounds, you know, political backgrounds, faiths, sexualities, drag queens, etc., etc. The one thing that would have marked him out is that we all know damn well he is not an advocate of free speech. He wants to severely censor what he allows as free speech. That is well known. So therefore, why should he be given a platform when, you know, it was damn obvious that that's the point that he'd be making? That was the first point. And then the second point was kind of a sort of a public order safety issue. You've got a gathering of people there for free speech. We know they would not have been his greatest fans. And I think, as actually happened in the end, to a very small degree, because there was a very small amount of violence. I emphasise it was tiny. I think the vast majority of people there had no idea it was even going on. It's only now that it's been splattered all over the internet that the world and his wife knows. If he'd got up on that stage, there could have been more trouble, and I think that would have been horrendous for everyone involved, not least Ali himself. So they were the two main reasons that I would not have personally allowed him to come anywhere near.
Okay.
Can I say three things?
Go ahead, Abu.
First, Lucy, she probably did this she probably had good intentions.
I think so, yes.
Yes, I agree with that.
She was not informed. It's not really her fault, or maybe she could have.
Poor judgment, I'd say, is the thing that
yeah, but it was probably stressful. I know how hard it is to do things when you have so much to do, and it's very stressful to do this. The second thing is Ali Dawah has caused problem for Tommy Robinson's family, according to him at least. But I trust him on this, that he had tried to dox his family and all kind of stuff. So, seriously, I can understand Sargon of Akkad's point that it's better for him to speak so that everyone can hear what he says, and then maybe everybody will boo and so on. But seriously, if your family had been doxed or threatened by him, would you allow him to speak? I don't know.
Okay, so there's one extra thing that I want to add, and I don't seem to have the video here, but there was a video that surfaced on Twitter, and again, Steve, you can confirm, hopefully, or Raj. There was a video that actually showed Tommy Robinson saying that he knew Ali Dawah was coming on the 2nd of May. So that was, 4 days before? Saying, hey, yes, Ali Dawah was going to be our surprise dumb guest, or whatever the words were that I don't want to miss. That's my understanding. It could have been slightly different words, so I'm open to correction on exactly the words. But there was about a half-hour thing, and towards a certain point, I think around 27 minutes in this particular video, which I can't seem to find. If you can find it and point it out and give us a link, I'm happy to bring that up. So apparently Tommy Robinson did know about this and actually said it in the video, and I heard it. So for me, I've got to be consistent, and I am going to call out, Tommy and some of his supporters as well as we go through this. So this is not all, pointing the finger at Ali Dawah, for me anyway, and obviously you guys are welcome to disagree. I think for me personally, I want to have my integrity, and I want to be consistent and honest. And if I see things that are not right on Tommy Robinson's side or Ali Dawah's side or whoever, I'm going to point them both out. So there's a question mark for me around why Tommy Robinson said that Ali Dawah was coming, as the joke or whatever the case may be. He said, hey, yes, Ali Dawah was a guest, our surprise sort of dumb guest, or whatever words that were used there, at least 4 days before the event. So I don't know if you know about that, Steve. You're aware of that?
No, I wasn't, but I think I do know the video you're talking about. It was about half an hour long video, yes, and I think Tommy was wearing a sort of blue polo shirt.
Yes, if I could find that video, I'm happy to play it. I think we've got to call it out. So to me, there's a bit of there's a big question mark over why he says he didn't know, or he didn't have the name or whatever. So can you clarify this, Steve? Because this seems to me to be, at the very least, very fuzzy. If 4 days before you're aware that Tommy's coming, you then get Lucy confirming this. I don't know what the day was. This was the 5th. So this was 3 days after Tommy made that video. There must have been some communication that suggested he was coming and that Tommy knew about that.
Yeah, I mean, I will look for that video, because I know I had that video and I watched it, although I can't recollect that specific point. But what I do know is that 24 hours before, on Saturday, Tommy did announce that Ali Dawah is not going to be attending. He's not going to be speaking. So I don't know. Yeah, if you're right, and 4 days before he was saying he was certainly saying the day before he is not.
Okay.
But I guess, even if he said it the 24 hours before, was that message passed on to Ali or not?
Yes. So I think we can point a finger towards to Tommy in this particular case and go, hey, it appears like you're flip-flopping here. It's your event. You can do what you like, but at least be consistent. If you're inviting Ali, invite him. And then for Lucy to go and say this, presumably they talk to each other, unless this is a complete breakdown, because there was a video of Tommy going, hey, I take responsibility. There was a miscommunication. I'm not sure to what degree. Raj, did you want to jump in and add something here?
Yeah, because I thought you muted me because I'm a big fan and you was
Yes, it was. Sorry, we did do that. So
and yes. Discriminating because I'm brown as well. What racist? Terrible.
We're discriminating against your
I told you, everybody. Ali, you're right. Racism. Muted because I'm brown.
Go ahead.
All right, so let me give my side of the event because I saw the whole thing unfolding.
Yeah, but just if you can, Raj, give us a little bit because we're going to go through it bit by bit. So we'll stop along the way. But in regards to Tommy knowing about Ali coming prior to the event, what's your knowledge on that?
I think he was trolling him and it kind of got out of hand. That's my personal opinion. And I think he probably kind of wanted him to come down and embarrass him and then not let him in. I think Lucy was kind of a scapegoat and she didn't really understand that, you know, Tommy Robinson's got a dark sense of humor, like a bit like me. And I think he thought, all right, let me play him a bit, and it just got out of hand, in my opinion.
Okay, so you think he wasn't serious in that video? Somehow there's.
I think he was serious in the sense that he wanted him to come down, but he wasn't serious enough that he was going to let him on stage. Okay,
so I think from my point of view, then that's a mark against Tommy because that's easy to misconstrue, and clearly his own staff member misconstrued or miscommunicated that, and she invited him, and here we've got it on screen. So we've got to be fair and say, okay, Tommy screwed the pooch on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I was behind the scene. There was no way Ali Dawa could have got back behind that VIP area because there were like guys there built like tanks that are protecting Tommy. Tommy Robinson has been threatened by all of these guys. I mean, I can understand from his point of view why he wouldn't want him behind there, but he should have let him speak once he confirmed that he was coming and his team confirmed it. And Ali Dawa and Muhammad Hijab, I mean, whatever anyone thinks of them, they were treated really badly.
Okay, we'll come to that. We'll come to that. Yes, and to some degree, I agree with you. So we'll come on to that in a second. Okay, so your view at the moment is that Tommy wanted him to come, but he wasn't. He had no intention. This is kind of what you surmise, because we can't read his mind. But you surmise that he kind of trolled him and wanted him to come, but was never going to let him speak anyway. But even if that was the case,
that's my kind of take from it.
But even if that was the case, then Lucy should never have informally invited him, because that certainly reflects badly on the Robinson organization. That she actually formally invited him, and we know that his name was on the list there. So if that's trolling, then that's completely, in my view, out of order.
Robert, it's out of order. I mean, like I said, I support Tommy Robinson. I still do, but in this particular aspect, I think Lucy has been treated abysmally as well, and she done such a great job on that day, and been sticking up for him. And I think he's kind of thrown her under the bus because the FLA or even the Football Lads Alliance have kicked up a stink that she's now a traitor and then she's like a lefty Antifa trying to kind of infiltrate Tommy Robinson's crew. But just last week she was like, one of the greatest people that they even knew. So I think there's a lot of bad things going on behind the scene with Tommy as well, and I have to condemn him for that.
Okay, cool. So let's move on from there then. So Tommy said that in the video. Ali's been invited. He thinks he's coming. Everybody else thinks he's coming because she being a staff member has formally invited him. Okay, so that's what's happened. So he was a hypocrite initially. They've made the mistake of inviting him, but now he's invited. Okay, so we're at that point now. Here's another one that Ali Dawa put out. This was actually a bit earlier, so I should have put this in a little bit earlier. But this is, again, just to show. Can I make this a bit bigger? Why is this not getting bigger? Sorry about that.
That sounds a bit dodgy,
Yes. And now
sorry, I got very frozen.
Don't know if you can see that. Whoa. No, I didn't want that. There. Yes. So here's Ali Dawa on the 27th. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, told us that if you've got nothing good to say, then just remain silent. Can you imagine how good the sound of nature will be if these 7 men and 2 women stayed like this? So I think, again, this is a clear indication, and this was on the 27th, so this is a clear indication of Ali Dawa's view against freedom of speech. So let's just remember that Ali Dawa is clearly against freedom of speech. I don't want that to get forgotten as we go through this. Right, so let's move on.
Can I say again, whatever whatever the truth, the reality is, and in my mind, it's just a bit of a miscommunication between two people that are involved in organising this. Ali is, as I said, he's making as big of this as he possibly can, which we know is all the Dawa team's style of operandum. That this is what they do week in and week out at Speaker's Corner. They turn something and make a drama out of the minutest thing to try and meet their own cause. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I agree. So the Dawa sort of team and Ali and his people, they have a propaganda thing of, okay, let's play the victim. Let's try and get all the minorities together because we're being the persecuted. So that's part of what I notice as one of their tactics, strategies, whatever the case is to play the victim. So yes, he's playing this up. And on the other side of the coin, again, if one is to be somewhat fair, I think he's got some reason to play this up. Obviously, he's milking it for everything he can get, no doubt about that. But he's got a reason. Had he been prevented in the beginning, none of this would have happened. Then he could have cried crocodile tears, and it would be easier, as I think we have done, to refute the reason, for him not coming, had they stopped it in the very beginning. But they didn't. I wouldn't be quite as charitable as you, Steve, in saying it's a slight miscommunication. I think that's a huge oversight that he supposedly joked or said he was coming, and then she invited him. I mean, if you and your staff can't communicate, and if this entire thing was to make Ali look foolish, then again, I think that's not an intellectually honest position to take. Just say, Ali, you're not coming, and here's the reasons why. And then it would have been done.
Maybe I'm being too kind, but I'd really like to think that none of this was, created on purpose. Because I suppose you're right. It makes them look stupid as much as Ali.
Yeah, and I think Tommy, and he says he takes responsibility, and in which case, the buck does stop with him, and Lucy got caught into this, and I don't know all the history behind that, but the buck does stop then with him. It should have been made clear, because clearly he would have seen this. I mean, if they're not communicating and he doesn't know that she's formally invited him on Twitter or that his name is on the speakers list there, then I mean, are these guys all on the same team? I mean, I've had
again, people are going to say I'm just making up excuses. These are three young guys that have organised this. They don't have any background in events management in putting on, major shows in Whitehall. They are all amateurs doing this. Three young people who were like staying up all night for days organising this all. I think we can't expect things to be going perfectly.
Guys, should we be discussing the personnel issues here? I don't think so.
Well, it's more a point that I think there's a huge oversight, especially because Ali Dawa was so controversial. Okay. I don't think one can miss that.
Again, we've said that something went wrong somewhere, and I think that's where we should leave it.
Okay. So here's Ali Dawa, who said, Tommy and Milo are hypocrites, but the YouTuber Sargon of God, he defended my right to speak. My right to speak on stage. Salute him for that.
He didn't really listen what he said. No. Because Sargon was actually making a joke. He said, I would have liked to hear him speak.
Okay, so that's his interpretation of what Sargon said. But he put here, my right to speak on stage. And I'm bringing up this specific tweet because he mentioned it. So I'm responding to it because obviously he didn't invite me to his stream, even though I'm inviting him to my stream, but I don't expect the right. And so I put here, when will you get the message? You don't have a right to speak on stage. You need to snap out of this delusion. Now, this particular tweet is what they highlighted in their live stream, and they were very surprised and shocked. And I'm a Islamophobe and other sort of nondescript, useless words that are bandied about. And again, I would say to Ali, if I invited you onto this show, Ali Dawa, and then suddenly revoked it, do you have a right to come on the show? And the answer is clearly no. You've been granted the privilege to come, which I could withdraw if I wanted to. Now, I'm not the person who would invite you and then withdraw that, but it is a privilege, not a right. And that's why I say you do not have a right to speak on stage. So this whole thing of my right, no, you don't have a right. You have a privilege that was granted, and I would suggest incorrectly withdrawn. So that's the reason why. So that's my response to you. So your claims about Islamophobia and hate and all of this, that's water for ducks back. That doesn't work with me, my friend. So if you want to step up to the adults table, you better come with something better than that. I'm a little bit more psychologically educated, and that's not going to work with me. Maybe other people get caught with that nonsense. It's not going to work with me.
Yeah, but that's why he hates you for it, because this is the same thing. When you criticize Islam, they say, oh, you hate all Muslims. This is the same thing. Freedom of speech. I have freedom of speech, so I need to go on stage. No, it's not. It's something completely different. And this is what you pointed out, and he doesn't like that.
I think this is a kind of the same kind of attitude. Like, have you seen the latest Dave Rubin video where he is like talking to SJWs that are like yelling phrases?
No, I haven't seen. I haven't seen that yet.
Anyway, but it's this like disgusting kind of this disgusting, like, I'm entitled to like shut down. I'm entitled to making you not speak, and I'm entitled to speak on your event. And this, it's like, I find it so disgusting.
Yeah, I think you're right. This is the distinction that a lot of people, and if in fact Sargon and other people said that, this is the distinction I think they're missing, and I'd happily have that conversation. There's a difference between having freedom of speech, which Ali and everybody else does in Speaker's Corner and elsewhere in the public sphere, and the right to speak on a private stage. And in this particular case, as we've mentioned, these were all people who were advocates of free speech. I think we've ridden that hobby horse enough now. So that's my response to that tweet. So let's move on. So then now let's get to something where maybe some of us will disagree. I watched the videos, and again, I want you guys to comment on this. To me, and we'll get to hijab and so forth. To me, it was clear that there were people who threw punches to hijab. For me personally, I don't see how anybody can argue that. And I know some of the Tommy Robinson supporters, and we'll get to that later on, suggested that wasn't the case. I think for anybody with eyes, and I think hopefully I've got eyes, he was attacked by multiple people. Now, whether instigated, we can have that conversation, but clearly punches were thrown by multiple people from behind, from the side, and whatever the case is. And so I did tweet out here, just in case people didn't notice this. I did say I disagree with Ali Dawah on most things, but in this case, I agree. These people need to face the law. So these people clearly, in my view, did attack hijab. Hijab did not attack anybody. One can argue, like I say, whether he incited violence, and we can have that discussion for sure, but he didn't throw the first punch. So these people, and I think if it were the other way around, we'd all be very quick onto the bandwagon saying, hey, these Muslims attacked, Tommy Robinson or whoever. They need to face the law. And from my point of view, I need to be consistent. I'm not going to speak for anybody else, and suggest that these guys face the law as well. So I want to make sure, as far as I feel, that I'm being fair. And I'm going to pass it over to the panel. And
can I say something? Can I say something? Because I was there from beginning. I was there from beginning to end, and I actually got the film of him getting punched. If you've seen that film on video vids, and so you can see Muhammad Hijab being punched in the face. I want to say something that, people watch that video and some people are going, oh, it's quite humorous, he got what he deserved. But when you're there in person and there's like all these people baying for someone's blood, even if you dislike them, you cannot condone it. Yeah, and I saw it firsthand, and it was very, 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 very violent. You didn't see that. You saw a lot of people really wanted to if they got hold of them, I don't know what they would have done to them. So a lot of people kind of need to start having some empathy for Muhammad Hijab in a sense. And today he did apologize on a video that he's kind of conduct at Speaker's Corner about the mouth guards and the MMA fights and stuff may have contributed to what happened on that day, because people perceived him as a particular way. It's very difficult for anybody to justify what happened, and when they do, it's just going to make all of us lot from our side look like hypocrites and people that haven't got no morality. So we've got to be the better person and just condemn it outright and say, look, it shouldn't have happened.
Cool. Let's hear from the other guys. Steve.
Okay, so I'll agree with both of you there. The idiots that punched him. I only actually saw one punch. I'm sure if the police hadn't been there, there would have been more. But they were idiots. They shouldn't have done it. They kind of added in a small part to bringing down the reputation of a day that I think was a great day. They should have not done it. I never support violence, so it should not have happened. But there is a but coming.
Yes, yeah, we will definitely get onto that in a moment. I just want to hear from Stops and Abu if they've got anything extra. Yes, we'll definitely include that for sure. Stops, Abu, do you guys want to add anything additional or say something different? You want to disagree or share any other thoughts?
His thing is very stupid. Like, this was like one guy I can understand if it was like Antifa that like tried to stop the march and they would attack them with stones and so on. I can have an understanding that you're defending yourself, but this was like one guy protecting another guy. It's like it doesn't look good. And I think it's stupid.
Thoughts there? Or if not, if you don't have anything to add to that, Stops, do you want to then give your thoughts from your view on hijabs, and we'll go on to that, or do you want to say anything about these guys?
I just have two things.
Go.
One thing is, did it make this day worse or better? Was this a significant issue? I think there's much too much being made of this. This was an insignificant scuffle in some remote corner somewhere, and that's it. So why make such a big deal of it? Yes, I don't think no violence is better than violence at the end of the day, and that is it. I don't think there's a discussion here. For me, then there's a lot of things. Why was hijab there in the first place? Why was he there with his gum guard? Why was this? Why was this? Why was it? Okay, there's a lot of factors that led up to this, but I think it's insignificant. I think we should just leave it, learn what we can from it. In other words, just leave it alone. Don't make such a big deal out of it.
Well, I think, yes, I think I would agree with you in the great scheme of the event itself. The success of the event shouldn't be overshadowed by this. And had the mainstream media actually covered this, all you would have heard is there was a scuffle. Unless they wanted to focus on this for political or some other reasons, this was barely a scuffle in the great scheme of things.
So don't milk it.
But all we are saying is, well, we're just responding because from our point of view, we know some of these people and they've tried to make it a big thing. So we're just responding in that sense. But I think you're bringing some perspective in the sense of, out of the entire event, it was a small scuffle and it was quickly dealt with. So I take your point on that. So now I'm going to pass it over to you guys. Give me your thoughts on hijab's conduct, because obviously Raj and Steve were there, and let's share that. So we condemn the violence against hijab. What is your thoughts now on hijab himself and what happened prior to the actual punches being thrown?
Shall I go? Because I saw him. Or do you want to go, Steve?
No, you go first.
All right, no white privilege today. Racist. I was muted for like 4 hours, like putting a little.
It's against your fan, yes, that damn black fan of yours.
No, I don't believe it. I believe you like all racists against me. This is what most Muslims think. Anything that goes wrong.
Come on, you sexy Sikh, get on with it now.
All right, so the thing is that I saw like Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawa talking to the crowd beforehand, and it was very jovial. It was quite heated sometimes, but it was never at any point. Muhammad Hijab always had a smile. It wasn't like they were going in there frowning and looking like they were going to fight. Everyone was joking. Ali Dawa was joking. He was dressed up quite smartly for once, and it kind of just like from a split second when those two other guys suddenly come, it just changed the whole atmosphere, and it just went from 0 to 100 very, very quickly. And it wasn't because of Muhammad Hijab, because whatever you think of him, I know he's a bully at the park and he's admitted it as well, so we've got to give him that credit. But these guys that come over just escalated the situation to a point that it could never turn back, because once they started threatening each other, it was only going to go one way. So we've got to condemn them outright and say, look, they didn't come there with an aggressive attitude. If you watch the beginning of the films, all the conversations were very light-hearted and more like banter with everybody. But I'm going to say one thing. They have no sense of humor. Yeah. I mean, I have no clue what's going on in their heads. But Gavin McGuinness said to Muhammad Hijab, Muhammad Hijab asked him, what do you do for a living? He said, I'm a drummer with the Rolling Stones. And Muhammad Hijab believed him. So there's a sarcasm within, once you become Islamically dominated in your brain, the sarcasm and the kind of sense of humor is just gone. So I think that's one of the biggest issues, because when they went down there, they were kind of trying to joke with people, but they weren't getting the jokes from the other side. So Gavin McGuinness said to Ali Dawa, Muslims are the only people that are not allowed to speak on stage. As a joke, Ali Dawa took that as seriously and said, thank you for admitting the truth. So yeah, it was kind of jovial before, but then yeah, it did turn.
Yes, obviously they missed the humor of what's his name?
Normal people.
Gavin McGuinness.
Damn it! Yeah.
So,
And he obviously
hang on,
did it with a
but you're
straight face as well. Yeah.
So you're saying this
But I
was-
mean, it's obvious it was a joke.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, they could not see it.
So you're saying 100% this was not staged, this was not provoked, this was not looking and craving attention.
They were looking to crave attention. There's no doubt about that. But they were not in any way aggressive or had a frown on their face. If you look at the videos, Muhammad Hijab, if he was standing there like with a frown on his face and he was kind of like, oh, I'm a bodyguard, he was joking and a smile on his face. He was shaking everyone's hands. And even the guys that kind of disliked them, he was still talking. So from my position, he did not go there with a kind of an aggressive manner. But it did.
No, it's not that. No. What I'm trying to make sure is that they did not go there to be the victim.
Oh, yeah, they did go there to be the victim. There's no doubt about that.
They did or they didn't? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
They did. Obviously, they were
okay.
going to win either way. If they went on the stage, they won. If they didn't go on the stage, they won.
So what's your view then? Okay, so Raj, because I want you to finish off the piece and then we'll give it to Steve and the rest of the panel. What's your view then? Okay, so he was friendly, he was talking to everybody, etc. And then obviously it got a little bit more heated and then he put the gum guard in. So to talk through your perspective on what happened at that stage and then the last little bit where he was removed by the police.
I was behind the barrier. I did. Now, before everyone says I'm a chicken, I am a little bit of a chicken sometimes, but I did try to get out of the barrier, but they wouldn't let me through because they were worried for my safety. I could see from the distance that Muhammad Hijab then had a blue thing in his mouth, and I was like, well, what is he doing with that? And it did look provocative to me from a distance, because when you got guys kind of like baying for your blood and then you're standing there with a mouth guard, it just looks like you're, all right, I'm ready to fight. And so I don't know what Ali Dawa done. I'm going to say it again. I think he was hiding underneath Lucy's skirt. He somehow disappeared magically from the whole situation. But Saeed was there. And I think Muhammad Hijab kind of like, he didn't do himself any favors by the way he was acting. And I think he made the situation a lot worse than what it could be if he was just standing there and didn't say or put the mouth guard in. That doesn't make any excuse for what happened. I'm just trying to be objective and understand from the other side why they might have got so agitated. Because if you listen to the people speaking, they say, why you got an effing mouth guard? And they kept on saying the mouth guard. And so it must have affected them mentally when they saw that mouth guard.
When did he say that I'm ready to die?
That was literally behind the truck. And that was just a few minutes before he got punched in the face. And so that was maybe like 3 or 4 minutes before that.
There was a suggestion that somebody said to him, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you, or words to that effect. And then he responded with X, Y, and Z. I'm not sure if that's only his perspective or where I heard that.
But the thing is, like, I've been in situations myself that, you know, when I've been surrounded and I've gone like, oh, I'm ready to, you know, you get this adrenaline that you can't help. I don't excuse what he's saying, but the one thing I condemn is his silly nature of always saying, let's do an MMA fight. He done it on that day as well, and the other guy called him out and said, no, we'll do it around the corner, freehand. And so he's always notching the level up in terms of the threat of violence, and he's admitted that now, so I can't keep condemning that on that. I'm not sure why he admitted it. It doesn't matter. The fact is he's apologized, which is a big step on his part.
Well, I mean, we might not be so charitable on that. Obviously, for those that don't know, apparently he's been suspended from being a religious instructor at some school in London. So I'm not unconvinced that might have some impact on this, whatever sort of apology. I haven't seen the video. So I don't know whether that's had an impact, but it's fair to say it may well have had an impact on him apologizing or not. Raj, is there anything else? Otherwise,
I just want to say one thing is that I've been a
fan.
I've been getting a lot of criticism about being a hypocrite, and I'm going to go on Sunday and I'm going to state my case, and it may seem hypocritical, but I still support the event. I still support Tommy Robinson. I still support people's right to speak, and I still kind of support the fact that, you know, Tommy Robinson said no, that's his decision, but I don't agree with it. So I will condemn on Sunday what I think needs to be condemned, and support. Well, I'm going to get a lot of hate for that because they want me to outright condemn the whole thing. I'm not. It was a great event. If he was there, everyone was nice. I didn't feel like I was alienated or felt out of place. You know, I remember I was dressed, you know, with like Indian clothes and a turban. I didn't feel any racism or anything. I will say one thing before, because I'm going to have to go in a bit, that the end of the actual event, I felt became very kind of like Islamic, kind of like a lot of hate towards Islam, and a bit too much towards that end. It should have been stuck to free speech rather than keeping attacking one particular faith.
Cool. All right, I'm just going to mute you just because of your fan. No other reason.
No, it's because I'm brown, everyone. Please help me.
Thanks, Raj, for that.
Racism.
Stay with us if you can. If not, obviously, thank you so much for joining us. But obviously, we will continue. I want to pass it over to Steve.
I'm gonna just really listen. If I need to interject, I'll say.
Okay, great. I'm going to pass it over to Steve now. Steve, please go ahead. Your thoughts.
Well, before I actually talk about Sunday, can I just pass comment on why does it seem to be completely wholly acceptable for Muslims, and including people currently in the chat room, to be continually repeating the term Uncle Tom? I think that's one of the most highly offensive racist terms I know of, but they are all banding it round left, right and centre all the time, and they seem to think it's perfectly acceptable in a way that if anyone was to be using any N words or P words, that would be highly outrageous and they'd be reporting us to the bloody police. I wish people would grow some and stop using outrageous racist terms like Uncle Tom and think that it's completely and utterly acceptable.
Yeah,
because there's one stupid twat doing it at the moment in the chat room, and he needs to fucking grow up and go home to mummy.
Yes, and I think there's clearly hypocrites there that it's all very well when it's hate speech against their prophet, but when it's hateful comments that one could clearly say could be a hateful comment, then that's okay. So, you know, I think the hypocritical, if the shoe fits, wear it. If obviously not all Muslims are hypocritical, but those that are claiming Uncle Tom, is it okay for us to make fun of your prophet and for that to be okay? If it's not,
exactly. And yes, we're the hate preachers. Why? Because we dare to criticize their faith, their religion, but they can sit there in their bedrooms typing on their computers Uncle Tom, coconut. It's completely unacceptable. And if they're living in Britain, they need to bloody ship out quickly. And that is not a racist statement. That is a statement saying we do not tolerate racist fascists in Britain. So they can fuck off with their Uncle Tom and their coconut terms. Sorry, I was just quite wound up by saying that. Shall I go on to talk about the day now?
Yes, go ahead.
No, but I think you're right to be upset about that. There's a disgusting kind of this emotional manipulation. They want like the people from their own tribe, like you see this in the US, like where blacks who do not agree with like the far left agenda, or at least the left agenda, they are attacking them as hell, and they are using these Uncle Tom and these slurs which are really racist to like emotionally force them back into.
And even Ali's doing it himself in the video that he put out only earlier this afternoon. He kept on talking about Uncle Tom. I think he's trying to make out that he was talking about Tommy Robinson, but no, he was using it in its real meaning. So anyway, Sunday, what was I going to say? So I wasn't actually present at the time where the physical violence kicked off, but I was there. It must have been a good half an hour earlier, and at that point, Hijab was asking a guy out for a fight. He was asking this guy for a fight down the road, and he was saying, come on, let's go down the road now. Let's have a fight now. And that was before there was any intimidation or violence or threats or anything from anyone else. And I witnessed that, and that's on a video, and it's on a video that I put up only before we started this show, but I've seen it on other videos as well. So the guy that he was talking to was within the stage area, was talking over the barrier. He was the other side of the barrier. He was asking people out for fights at that point before there was any threats of intimidation or anything whatsoever. So they were sort of walking around outside the stage area, sort of behind the stage area, for quite a while. And then when it kicked off, I was actually in front of the stage, actually watching and listening to the speeches at that point. So all I've seen of that is what I've seen on videos, but obviously there are many videos from lots and lots of different angles. And I would make the point, the fact that we're talking about this now, they will view this as a success. And to be honest, Stops is right in saying, the fact that we're giving it any airtime, it was a minor moment. It was a small minor moment. The vast majority of people there wouldn't even had any idea that it happened. And quite frankly, equivalent moments, if not worse, happen on a weekly basis at Speaker's Corner. So the fact that this one moment is still being talked about a week later, well, let's analyze any moment at Speaker's Corner of violence, because as we all know, violence is an increasing occurrence on a weekly basis at Speaker's Corner. But I do want to make the points. The guy went with a mouth guard. Why would you turn up with a mouth guard? The man stood there again before he was physically touched by anyone, slapped his chest and said, "I'm ready for a fight. I'm ready to die." That was before any physical violence. So as we've all acknowledged, there shouldn't have been any physical violence. As far as I can see from all the videos, it was one punch. It was one punch from one idiot. It may have got proceeded to more than that if the police hadn't dragged him away. But I would also point out it wasn't just the police that was stopping any more violence. It's clear on all the videos there were many people there who obviously they're attending the day, who would have been pro Tommy Robinson, who were pulling people back, trying to get between them, trying to separate them, etc., etc. So it was one person who laid a punch. There were lots of people, police and others, trying to stop it to get to anything more. And the guy had only a few minutes before slapped his chest and said, "I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to die," and then put his mouth guard in his mouth.
Can I just say something, Steve? Yeah, Steve.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, man. We're gonna just have to agree to disagree. We're not like conjoined twins or anything, so we can.
Despite what people say,
we're gonna have to be conjoined twins on Sunday, so we can attack. We can fight them off, yeah. Because I'm gonna be surrounded like those savages in that video. Me being surrounded by like 50 people. I have to say he wasn't just hit once. If you look at the videos, there's guys punching him on the back of the head. There's people punching him on the sides, and you need to look at all views. That one was a full, what you call hit on the face that hit him, but there were other people. I think he must have got hit, from what I've seen, altogether like 6-7 times. People are hitting him on the back of the head, the back, and so for us it may not seem much, but when you're surrounded and you're kind of getting attacked left, right, center.
Fair dues. I'll accept that then. I'll
yeah. So the other videos, the one thing I do want to clarify, because I'm still confused, because you was closer to the conversation with that big white guy.
Yeah.
Did Mohammed Hijab say to him, "Let's go to the gym," or did that other guy say, "Let's fight"? I'm still confused about who started the fact about doing the MMA. Was it Hijab or him?
They were talking to each other. It was getting a heated conversation.
Yeah.
I honestly not sure who first brought up, "Well, let's have a physical fight," but I certainly categorically know that Hijab was saying to the white guy, "Come on, let's have a fight. Let's go down the road now. Let's do it now," he said. Yeah,
I think that's so important. Yeah, because because for me it seems like the other guy instigated that, so I need to listen to the video. But if Hijab instigated that, "Let's do an MMA fight," then in reality, then the whole dynamics of the situation will change.
And maybe here now tonight we can't 100% for sure say which of the two individuals initiated that idea. But even if it was the white guy, the response from Hijab was, "Okay, yes, let's go and fight down the road now. Let's do it. Let's fight."
Yeah.
I think that's the thing I want to highlight here. We're spending a lot of time on this, and I do think we need to move on, and I've got some other things here, but I do want to highlight what you said there. There are definitely other ways. Now, Ali Dawa, Saeed, and most normal human beings do not walk around with a gum guard. And there are ways to de-escalate, even if there are somewhat violent or potentially violent individuals. "Hey, dude, do you know what? I'm just here to have a conversation. I'm not here to have any fights. You know what?" And there are ways that you can de-escalate. But somebody like Hijab is not really a de-escalation type person. And so, it's more a case that he wants to have a fisticuff if he can. He wants to, quote unquote, do it legally, which means on his terms, in the way he wants to, so that he's got the best chance of prevailing in his mind. But there are ways that you can do it. So when he was surrounded, etc., prior to punches being thrown, that could have been de-escalated. And so, do you know what, guys? You know what? We're going to move away here, but that's the other thing. Ali Dawa must have said at least 20 times that he's there on Lucy. The people said to him, "Ali Dawa, you're not speaking. We want you to leave now." There was one of the stewards that said that. No, he kept demanding to stay there. and he's going to speak as if saying it over and over again. Well, suddenly everybody's going to go, do you know what, Ali? You've said now that you've been invited 20 times. We're now going to allow you to speak. But of course, this goes completely past it. He's going to push the point, keep pushing the point, even when he's been disinvited. He's going to stand his ground there instead of going, you know what? Okay, I feel that's hypocritical. You guys invited me. Now you've disinvited me. I'm not happy. Okay, I'm going to leave. That's not the case. So there's also that thing of, I'm going to play this for as much as I can. I'm not going to move until somebody moves me away. So that's the other point I want to point out against, hijab and Ali Dawah in that particular case. So there's ways to de-escalate things as far as possible. And one of those is not putting a gum guard in your mouth, no matter what people are saying to you. Nobody else does that. So, let's move on. Otherwise, we can stay on this all night. Here was the other thing, by the way. So when Ali Dawah was refused, Rahim, who was the MC, and here he says it on Twitter, he said, you didn't give me your letter, Ali Dawah. Why you always lying? I asked you for it so I could read it, and you said you'd give it to me later. You never did. Also, I wasn't half drunk. I was fully drunk. Get your facts straight. So at one point, he knew he wasn't going to speak, and Rahim said, okay, give me the thing. And according to him, Ali Dawah said he'd do it later. Somebody else asked him as well, Ali Dawah, give us your speech and we'll get somebody to read it for you. He wasn't happy with that. He obviously wanted to do it himself, and nothing else was going to placate him. Because that would have mean, obviously, he wouldn't then have the propaganda capital to say, you all are hypocrites. So somebody else had done it. So that was part of the reason.
He was given absolutely multiple opportunities. Rahim offered him. Lucy was trying to sort it. Opinionated European tried to sort it. Multiple people tried to sort it and gave him multiple options for it to be sorted. But of course, no, that wouldn't have given them the great publicity that they, if they weren't planning to get, they very quickly realised they were going to get from this.
Steve, what about the thing with the security briefing that he never attended?
I don't know. I don't know whether there's a security briefing. I don't know whether that was the reason. I know that's been cited. I honestly don't know.
Me personally, and I was going to come on to that, and it's probably one of the other tweets here. I think that's a weak excuse. I think that's sort of a post hoc afterwards. Let's come up with some I don't think it's that serious. And I also don't think that I don't know, I think it might have been yourself, Steve. I'd probably disagree with you there on the security thing. He was clearly there. There was enough security around. Had he been on stage, I don't think there would have been any security issues. Those people were far away. There were bollards around there. So I don't know that, for me personally, and again, we can all disagree, I don't think that there's quote-unquote security issue. I think that was a post hoc reasoning that they used afterwards, which I think is a rather weak excuse that, hey, it would have kicked off. And that was what one of these right-wing guys said here. I can't remember who it was. These guys here, and I wanted to actually get him on the show, this Luke Nash guy. I was a bit disappointed. I watched their live stream, and they made a few statements that I thought were incorrect. And one of them was that this would have caused a riot, him being on stage. I don't agree with that. And if you look at the videos, the stage was miles away. It was at least up to waist height. I mean, somebody would literally have had to have some kind of projectile weapon to reach anybody on stage. And they looked like there was no way that was sort of going to happen there. So I'm not convinced that there would have been a danger to that. I think that's more of a post hoc thing myself.
It would have been a technicality.
Yeah. I don't think that's too much of an issue.
Can I just say something quickly?
Go for it.
I think what they were trying to say is not necessarily the front, but the back. I mean, if you understand the way the setup was, there was people around the VIP area. It wasn't like a VIP area with like a big wall. It was just tiny gates that people could just jump over. And so it wasn't that secure. Also, the people within the VIP area that hijab would have had to go through were very hostile to them as well. So it would have caused a commotion behind the scenes, I reckon, personally, if you stand there for a long period of time, not at the front.
Okay. So there could have been a security issue at the back.
100%.
But presumably then, one would also think about that prior to inviting him. So that kind of goes a little bit back to the inviting. Okay, sure. I'll take that as their advice.
It's a fault on their part as well.
So maybe there is a little bit more weight to that than I'm giving it, because I'm thinking about it from the front, but there could have been more of a security issue at the back because they were not obviously part of the group that were friendly. Let's put it that way. Okay, fair enough. Cool. then I also, and then there was just something else here. So obviously a couple of extra things have gone on here, and obviously people can jump in. So then there was the question about where were these funds coming from, because this whole thing was professionally set up, etc., etc. So where are these funds coming from, Ali Dawah asked. Not only was this such an expensive event, but Tommy's 7 properties and rent and bedrooms, and from somebody who doesn't work. Again, and so I just responded, no need to speculate and put forward conspiracy theories. When a far left internet bloke actually interviewed George, Llewellyn John, one of Tommy's staff members, and I put a link there. This guy, Mike Stutchberry, is very much what I would consider sort of a far left. He's like, Islam shouldn't be criticized and all that sort of stuff. So he's very much on that side. And he interviewed this young fellow, and you can see there the young fellow breaking down the pricing and so forth and talking about the donations they've got. So I corrected Ali Dawah, and predictably the response was a non-response. Rob, you just concentrate on your theory that nothing made something, lol. Since Sabur annihilated your ignorance on evolution, you haven't got over it, and the embarrassment had turned to blind hate, lol. Defending Islamophobes now. So of course that's the typical brain dead response when I provide some evidence for his conspiracy theory. So let's not forget that.
Doesn't he have 2 brain cells that can work simultaneously?
No, I don't think he does. No.
That's why it's very difficult, and that's why other Muslims, as Steve will know, and Raj as well, other Muslims have called him out as not the best representative. If somebody's going to present themselves as some kind of Sunni representative for Islam or Sunni Islam at least, then other Muslims have pointed out that Ali Dawah was far from one of the best representatives. If you're going to find someone, there's other people out there that you can find that can do that. But of course, I think, again, this is just a demonstration that you can't really have a rational, nuanced discussion with Ali Dawah. It's when you point out facts, which is clearly there by a left-wing person who interviewed one of the staff who went through their costings. His response is not to say, oh, thank you, Rob. Now I appreciate that you've given me the facts on where the money's coming from, as if that's got anything to do with the event. Who cares who's bankrolling it? It's all very well when George Soros bankrolls half of the far left, but if somebody's perhaps bankrolling, which doesn't seem to be the case, Tommy Robinson, then somehow that's got something to do with it. These are all red herrings that only work in one direction. But clearly he's not able to respond in any articulate or coherent method to my response, which was to point out the facts that were given in an interview by one of his staff. So I think that speaks volumes.
And at the end of the day, despite it being a fantastic event, it was not very expensive. You're not paying any rent. All they were paying for was the stage, the speakers,
7,000 or 8,000, was it 7,000, something like that? I think
it was something around that figure. Yeah. And now, for me to put something like on that, it would cost significantly more, because I wouldn't be able to do all the digital work and the video work. But that's precisely what Kaylin and specifically George do. They're highly talented with digital work and videos and getting the social media message out there. But it was not very expensive.
Yeah. Certainly in terms of, as you quite rightly point out, events go, and I'm sometimes involved in events as well. So I know the cost that the big events could put on. So this was, relatively speaking, a cheap event. It looked, perhaps to people who don't understand about events, more expensive than it actually was. So quite right. Yeah.
We're going to come on to the teaching suspension.
Yes, we're going to do that. I'm trying to do it in order here. Here was the thing from Sabi. Sorry, Sabi. Why am I saying Sabi? I'm seeing Wahhabi and Sarah and putting it together as Sabi. Apologies. From Sarah, it was a tweet where I just melded those two together. The Wahhabi Mafia have started cloning my account, so be careful of that as well. So there's somebody else that looks like Sarah. And now making comments on YouTube videos as Sarah Garvey. Please check that. But the reason I brought this up was because this was the video in which Tommy Robinson actually sort of took responsibility for it and so forth. And as I say, I'd still lay a little bit of the blame at his feet here. But here's the video of him, taking responsibility for everything and calling it a miscommunication. So there is a video online where he does do that. And then there was this one here, which was this Red Pill thing, which I wanted to invite these guys on, because obviously I do agree with some of their views. But again, I think, to be intellectually honest, you've got to call things as they really are. So these guys wandered around, seemed like nice enough guys. But again, I think they're doing a little bit of what the far left does, which is not being, entirely accurate. So they wandered around. One of the videos in there had them wandering past a pub, and they were going, "We were banned from the pub." And he put his camera towards it. And it wasn't that they were, because he made it sound like the two of them and their buddy, were banned from the pub. And when you bring the camera close, it said, "We are closed for unforeseen circumstances." Now, whether the pub did that because there's lots of people walking past, whatever the case is, but to claim that you were banned from the pub and make it sound as if it was just the three of them, I don't think that's entirely honest. So I wanted to point that out. And I got some, flack from some of the supporters, not for this so much, but when I pointed out that one's got to be honest when you see punches flying and so forth, and they try to say it was just pulling of his shirt and wasn't all that bad. So, I've taken a few tweets from the other side as well. But for me, I want to be intellectually honest. Please don't make stuff up. Don't make inferences that you were banned from a pub when it was closed for unforeseen circumstances, because I don't think that's entirely the full truth. So that's as much as I've got to say. I want to pass it over to you guys now to sort of give either your closing thoughts or other thoughts on this, and then we'll see if there's any more comments that we can go to and bring it to a close from there.
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment on the rather pathetic but not humble apology from Hijab that he's put out online. I don't know if it went out earlier today or late yesterday, and it is actually a bit of a groveling apology, but in the last 5 minutes of, I can't remember whether it was a 20-30 minute video, where he's acknowledged that he should not have gone to the event at all, and also acknowledged that he should not be pushing people for MMA fights, including on the day. And he's kind of said sorry, and that he doesn't want anyone else to follow his lead on doing that, and he is now going to stop doing that. Which you might
For
think,
how many hours?
Sorry?
For how many hours?
Exactly. Well, until his job is safe, basically, because one might think when listening to that, oh great, at long last a little bit of sense from someone who behaves like an absolute thug and idiot and has been doing so for months and months and months. But of course, then if you refer to what was going out on Twitter last night in terms of people divulging that he's a teacher at an academy in London, and then it was tweeted last night as well that he actually been suspended from his job pending an investigation. Now, we don't know that's true or not, but I hazard a guess it probably is, because I think once his employer was divulged on Twitter, I think a lot of people were sending them emails and messages about some of his behaviours. So, and then lo and behold, within 24 hours, he's putting an apology video out. So, there's the die-hard Wahhabi suddenly apologising about his wicked ways. And suddenly having a change of tune. So, but of course, that won't let them give up on this general nonsense that they're giving out about freedom of speech, etc., etc. So it'll be interesting to see whether Hijab turns up at Speaker's Corner on Sunday, or whether he'll be on continued good behaviour, trying to save desperately his job.
Yeah, I think here's the tweet that you might see hopefully on screen there. Yes, I would agree with you, Steve. I think the timing of his quote unquote apology is not that he suddenly sat down and had a deep think about this and came to a moral decision all by himself. I think he was spoken to most probably by some of his quote unquote elders, or whatever the case is, as well as possibly some of the people from the school, or whatever the case may be. So it wasn't all just Hijab. I don't think we would be in error of speculating that is in fact the case, that it's not just a change of heart, that he's suddenly turned over a new leaf. In my experience, certainly from a psychological point of view, that's very rare that somebody, it can happen, but normally in my experience, you need significant emotional events, something that happens that really, like, in a sense, rewires the brain. And that's rare for people to do that. So people will do certain things, and you've seen this with Hamid and Tawhid and whatever, and the Mars Muppet Muslim as well. When they attempt to apologize, you can see it's forced. It's not the natural state. So they're trying to do something that's not normally them. They've either been told, or whatever the case may be. And you can see the discomfort in the body language, no matter what comes out the mouth. So if you watch somebody's body, unless you're a Darren Brown, like a specialist at this, your body gives clues away that most people won't realize. And that's probably, been the case. I haven't seen this particular video of his, but that's traditionally the case. So these sort of things are, like you say, begrudging or fleeting apologies, but it's unlikely that people will change, their normal behavior that they're used to. So here was the tweet. Muhammad Hijab, this is obviously somebody's view, so it's not necessarily an official thing, but Muhammad Hijab, the gum shield wearing extremist that proclaimed that he was willing to die, has been suspended from his job as a religious education teacher at Chafford School in Raynham due to his involvement in Sunday's events at Whitehall. He is now under investigation for his extremist views. The school has 1,000 high school pupils.
And this is not doxing.
No, exactly.
This is public.
Yes, this is public on Twitter. So this is all available to the public on Twitter. So yes, and we don't.
Yeah, as 24 hours ago. So yeah, no doxing by Jinn&Tonic.
So let me reiterate those who came on late. I invited Saeed, who is Ali Dawa's cameraman, and I invited Ali Dawa personally on Twitter multiple times and asked Saeed to do so as well, for him to come on here and have his say. And I've heard nothing, and so
Uncle Tom.
there we go.
But this Mohammed
there's another gentleman here. I'm going to invite him on. That's speaking to me on Facebook. You guys carry on. I'm just going to see if I can bring in a gentleman by the name of Jason here.
Someone in the chat, Lexi, has just said that he personally needs to apologise to everyone that he's challenged for a fight, which I think is a very good point. I think he should certainly go round. And his school, if I was the manager of his school, I would be wanting more than he's done so far in terms of apology and demonstrating that he's changing his ways.
Are you going on Sunday?
Me?
Yeah, Steve.
Not sure. Maybe.
Come on. It'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Some of us do have other lives to live as well.
I know. Let's do it. Tag team. I can't go alone. I can.
Try again.
You'll never be alone there, Raj.
I know. You'll be there in spirit. Can I just say one thing though? I do know something, and I don't want to disclose what it is because I spoke to Saeed. You can hear me, can't you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't want to disclose it, like what's happening, but Muhammad Hijab has other issues as well that are personal that I can't disclose that might sometimes affect somebody's behavior. So that's all I can say. So some people sometimes don't behave. I've been like that when I've had emotional problems.
He wasn't having a diabetic attack like Diane.
I know. I'm trying to be compassionate and take into account what I've been told.
Come on, they tried that for Diane Abbott. We're not gonna.
But it is
Raj, I have to be honest as well, and go with the other guys as well.
Yeah.
I appreciate you feel like there's going to be some slack from you in Speaker's Corner, and I wish you the best. Make sure you've got your camera. But I'd be, just my own view, I'd be cautious of trying to apologize too much.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to make any difference for you in Speaker's Corner if that's part of your view here to try and do all of that sort of stuff. So
I'm trying to sweeten them up a bit. Please,
it's not going to help. Nobody's going to thank you for it, Raj. If he's got some psychological or social or other problems, then really he shouldn't be in public, and he needs professional help if that's what he needs, or whatever help he needs. Let's hope he gets that. I don't wish people ill will, but I also don't want people going around, threatening fights and so forth, and then coming afterwards what sounds like making excuses.
Can I say something here? Like, it's true that it's unlikely that a normal or most people would change their mind that quickly. There are one personality disorder that they today call emotionally unstable. It used to be called a borderline personality disorder, where you actually see this quite often. Like 1 minute they scream at you and you are the worst person in the world, and the next time they say, "Oh, forgive me, you're my best friend," and so on. But from what I've seen from Muhammad Hijab, I don't think he is borderline.
Yeah, I think they were trying to kind of like play me a little bit, I think.
It would be interesting, though, to have a psychiatric analysis of all of them, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but look, if you're
empty, then
if you're threatened and so on.
Well, let's answer this question in the chat as well, in capital letters. Obviously, this person wants it to be said. So what's wrong with putting a gum shield in? It's for his defense. When he realized anytime violence can happen, he put
it's naive,
and his decision later proved to be wise and correct. Okay, so I will answer last. Do you guys want to respond to what's wrong with putting the gum shield in? It's for his defense.
I'll say it because, you want to go, Steve, or should I go?
There's only one word. Everything.
I was just going to say one quick thing. The police go out into violent situations frequently. Do the police put gum shields in when they go out? Don't think they do they?
It looks provocative. When I saw the gum shield in his mouth, I was like, what is going on? Automatically, I think you're up for a fight. Yeah, that's the problem. And you have guys in the crowd that are looking at a guy that is saying, I'm willing to die, and he's got a gum shield in his mouth and he's pumping his chest out. What message do you think that sends?
Yeah. It's like protecting your hands by wearing boxing gloves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and I'll add to whatever they said. Yeah, nobody else walks around with a gum shield. And here's the thing: if you are challenging people to fights, etc., and violence is something that you're in some way looking for, even if you say the opposite, then in some way that's going to find you. Whatever you focus your attention on often has a way of coming about and coming into your world. So if you walk around with a gum shield, if you challenge people to MMA fights, then it's likely that some way that's going to happen to you. So what's wrong with it? It's a provocative act that no rational, normal human being who wants to actually have conversations, honest conversations, and share their views does. That's why we consider that wrong and a provocation, regardless of whether people actually act on it or not. When you put a gum shield in, it's not like you're going to continue having or de-escalate a conversation with putting a gum shield in your mouth. I hope that answers your question.
It's a bit like when North Korea are getting...
I go out with a gum shield. I say I'm ready to fight. I say I'm ready to die. And then someone punches me? No, surely not. Come on. Why are we giving this bullshit the time of day?
By the way, and I'm sure... Let me just add these in here. Here's a couple of verses just for those. Maybe we need to remind Muslims because it's their book. Maybe a few of them have forgotten these sort of things. Quran 31:19. And be moderate in your walk and lower your voice. Surely the ugliest of voices is the voice of the donkeys. That's Quran 31:19. Quran 17:37. Do not walk on the earth in haughty style. You can neither tear the earth apart, nor can you match the mountains in height. So I think there's two verses. There's other ones here, but there's a couple of verses to remind some of these Muslims that I think have got a fairly large ego and a large following, that if you're supposed to be following the Quran, then clearly you need to go back and reread these verses and consider your actions.
That is actually true. It's called kibr in Islam. Kibr is very, very bad. Like it's people who have kibr. Kibr is only for God. Only God is allowed to have kibr, meaning like pride or.
Well, snobbish and arrogant. Yeah.
Arrogance.
So if anybody knows of Luke Nash or anybody else that's a Tommy Robinson supporter, if Steve or any of you guys can get Tommy on, I'd like to have him on the show here. Again, we'd like to have some Muslims on the show. As I say, I invited Ali Dawa and Saeed, and they haven't made it here. But I'd like to have some of those guys on the show, and obviously we can talk about what we agree about, and we can talk about things that we think perhaps we didn't agree with. So if anybody knows any of those and they want to put them in touch or put me in touch with them, I'm very happy to do that. I think dialogue, whether we agree or disagree, is an important thing. And while I'm at it, please send us a few likes here if you enjoy the show. We're here every Friday 8 p.m. And if you want to join, then please friend me on Facebook or send us a message in the chat here. I will be adding a couple of people in, but we're going to go into an after show. So I'm not going to add somebody live now, but we'll go into an after show. If you want to join us on the after show, please let me know by typing in @Jinn&Tonic show. And as soon as we go to an after show, in other words, when we go offline from YouTube, we will still be in a hangout as we are now. It just won't be recorded. Just let me know that you want to join, and I will give you the link to do that.
Can I just give a light-hearted message from Tan, our prophet? So Tan has sent a message. He said, message to Tangoism. You do know that one day I will no longer exist. You, which is me, thank God, I'm an apostle. Steve, you, a guy called Kirk, or other apostles will have free reign over the Tango's Quran. So you have heard it here. We are the apostles. I am awaiting the 10 commandments, which I've asked him to do. So they will be given to me soon, and we will read them out at Speaker's Corner. Will you read them out, Steve?
Yeah.
The 10 commandments.
So what's happening with him? Is he still in France? What's his
he's
situation?
Still in France. He's got a little pug now, a little Nazi pug. You know, like that guy from Count Dracula. So he's over in France at the moment. So he seems to be doing good. He seems to be happy at the
Any
moment.
chance of him coming back here, or is he going to sort of stay there for 6 months and then try come back? Or
I mean, I spoke to Tommy Robinson, and I don't know whether he knows anything. You know, I've done that interview with Tommy Robinson on COE, and he seems to be under the impression that Tan's never coming back. Whether he knows something, I don't know. I'm also trying to arrange some kind of a debate between Tommy Robinson, if I can, and maybe someone like Mufti Lenk or one of those kind of more sensible kind of Dawa guys, rather than any Dawa. You know, because I think he embarrassed himself last time.
What happened to his stuff in the UK?
I think that he had to go away anyway, I think, and then they just wanted to let him back in.
yeah, normally with a visitor's visa, you got 6 months here, and then you have to be out of the country for 6 months before you can come back.
Okay, so I was under the wrong impression, because I thought he went to France just to leave the country and come back. And then he was stopped and said, and then they told him, no, you can't. Because I used to have to do this because our admins, when they forgot to organize me a business visa, I had to do the same thing. So I quickly hopped on a plane, flew over. I mean, it's just a couple of seconds over to Dubai and back. And I thought this is what he was doing. But then I left my stuff at home. So I would have been really, in the dumps if they wouldn't have let me back in the country, because I would have been stuck in Dubai and my stuff would have been in Doha or Abu Dhabi or something. So I was under the impression that he was on a hop going out and coming back, but he wasn't. And he actually did, pack up and leave, and then just couldn't get back because the visa has to be like 6 months or something. Okay, then it's different.
Yeah. Cool. So, is there anything else we want to say with regards to the
You can put the link into the show now, because we're going to go offline. So you can put this in the chat. So it's going to go for a couple of minutes. So if anybody wants to,
Cool.
They can join and pick up the link from the chat.
Yes. Okay. I'll put it in the chat. Then I guess I'll do that in a moment. So I'll do that in a second. Any more thoughts on the Freedom Day? I think from my point of view, to sort of finish it off, I agree with you guys. It was an overall success. I think that the main point of the demonstration, get together, etc., was, to highlight freedom of speech and the fact that we are clearly losing it. I'm totally against hate speech laws. I've debated people in multiple hangouts now. I don't think anybody has any sustainable response to this hate speech. It's very easy, and if you are watching this, here's what I'd suggest, and I've done this with a couple of people now, and I think a couple of them have actually realized the challenge. If somebody like Ali Dawa says hate speech, firstly, hate speech is a very subjective, woolly term. Even the government cannot give us a clear, definitive idea of what hate speech is, but all we have to ask is the following. So their version of hate speech, let's use Ali Dawa, version of hate speech is mocking the Prophet or drawing a cartoon or anything along those lines. And my response to Ali Dawa or to anybody else is, that's fine. If you want to play hate speech, then you have to grant that I choose, or I could choose, or anybody else could choose to suggest that Islam is a hateful religion because it divides people. It says some people are going to go to heaven and some are going to go to hell, and there's various other divisions there that certain people could find hateful, like homosexuals and apostates and ex-Muslims and so on. So if you're going to be intellectually consistent, which is questionable at best, then you have to grant that I'm prepared, or other people can say, hey, Islam is hate speech, and you are not allowed to talk about Islam in the public sphere. If you grant us that, I personally will give you the deal. I won't talk about Muhammad or talk about Islam if you don't ever talk about Islam in the public sphere, because otherwise you have to grant me that I can choose that at hate speech, because all I have to do is I say it feels hateful, which I can back up as I have done. So that's the easy counter to this whole hate speech thing. And unless you can give me some knockdown reason as to why your religion has special privilege and can be classed as hate speech, whereas mine can't, you have no defense. I'll leave it at that. Can you guys give your sort of final thoughts, and then we'll go to an after show?
No, I thought that was great.
Steve, what it is, yeah, if you watch a video on It's Ahmed, and it's me talking to a bunch of people after the Speaker's Corner event about free speech, and I was trying to explain what the event was about. I mean, it's unbelievable how stupid these guys are. I mean, you've got to watch the video to understand that they have no concept of free speech. So I was trying to explain that, you know, even if a Nazi came down to Speaker's Corner, I would allow them to speak, but I will condemn them and challenge them. That's not me restricting their free speech. I'm just trying to debunk them. And they just cannot. I mean, this is what's very dangerous and very worrying for me. They cannot understand that concept. And if they can't understand that, then, you know, the future's looking bleak. Watch that video and you'll understand that, you know, some of them are quite young, some of them are quite old, and some of them are like in their 30s. So if that's what we've got to deal with, then yeah, we definitely need to worry about the erosion of free speech. And if it goes, then we're pretty much screwed. That's all I want to say.
Thanks, Raj. Steve, some final thoughts?
No, I just want to support what Raj said, really. And we've seen them, you know, making attempts to limit free speech at Speaker's Corner for some time. And quite frankly, that's what first instigated this whole day for freedom. It was Tommy's interest in Speaker's Corner and the effect of the Wahhabis on Speaker's Corner, which brought about Sunday. I just hope Sunday is just the beginning of things, and I hope, you know, despite the minor cock-ups that may or may not have happened on Sunday, it was a great day, and I hope Tommy doesn't forget about Speaker's Corner, because I think we need his attention, and I think we need a whole lot more people's attention on the importance of Speaker's Corner and free speech in general.
Yeah, can I just say one thing from what Steve just said? Yeah, I don't want Speaker's Corner to be like a kind of like a fad with Tommy Robinson and them, and then they just go, because the regulars are gonna have to stay there. And the way it is at the moment is getting better because there's more of an eclectic mix of people. But if that starts going back to the way it was before, where there's like 80% Muslims and only talking about Islam and bullying everyone, then it's going to be a disaster in the long run, I think, because they're going to get a lot worse, especially the people that they think have kind of gone against them. So anybody that's listening on this chat, stop being quick keyboard warriors and go out there and actually speak your mind, because that's the only way that you're going to keep free speech.
And I think the good thing is that you and Steve sort of know Tommy as well. So you can remind him that perhaps he can come down there. Perhaps he can highlight it to people as well, so that we get more people with diverse views, with the express intention of coming out there to have a conversation and avoiding any sort of violence, and being able to walk away from that, I think would be, you know, a great thing. So
yeah, I did an interview with Gavin McGuinness, and he's extremely on PC. And he said he would love to, he would come down at some point. And also Milo, if she could, I said she, I mean he. And also with, what's the name?
Oops.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't trying to offend. And also Sargon of Akkad, I've done an interview with as well. And he said he would definitely come down again. So if we can get these high profile individuals coming down and kind of maybe doing a live stream and making Speaker's Corner the kind of hub of free speech for the UK, I think that would be amazing for, you know, everybody. Then we can fight that cause with a bit more gusto, because me and Steve are kind of like, and other people feel like sometimes we're like lone wolves, kind of like going down Speaker's Corner every week and kind of battling our right to speak. So hopefully, you know, other people can come down who are more high profile.
Yeah, keep the momentum.
Yeah, it needs to be kept.
Tops, any final thoughts? And then we'll pass it to
keep the momentum. I love it. I think we should take advantage of the situation the way that it is at the moment. I think absolutely correct. Keep it going. Don't stop now, because then it's only going to be a reversion. Was it a reversion? Revert.
Revert to, yeah.
What is that? Is that a revertism?
Yes, it'll revert to how it was before, which
would be a pity.
Yeah, indeed. Brilliant. Thank you, Stops. Abu, your final thoughts, and then if you could end the live broadcast with a hadith of the day. We'll then go to an after show, and I will post the link both in the main chat and to some individuals on Facebook. If my panelists stay on here as well, then there'll be 5 spaces. I may remove somebody to bring in potentially Saeed, the Muslim guest. So
I'm going for definite.
Okay, cool. So there'll be 6 spaces available. So Abu, your final thoughts, and then the hadith of the day, please.
First, I'm disappointed at the mainstream media, like the BBC. I was actually out traveling, and I was watching on a bad Wi-Fi this whole event, and I went into the BBC newspaper, and they didn't write a thing. Not in the international BBC, and not even in the local BBC, what I could see. And the few mainstream media that actually reported about it, like said that there were a lot less people there than really was there. You can just go and see like the pictures. It was definitely more than 3,000 people there. So that's what I'm disappointed about, but what can you expect?
That's a good point that you're raising. That there's a lot of people, the mainstream media is shit scared of Tommy Robinson because they think that he represents the right wing, the far right, the nationalists, the Islam haters, the whatever. So there's so many things it's just wrong, but they're so scared they don't know what to do with it. So that's it. So I think that's a good point that you're raising. Yeah.
Sorry, I've met him now. So anyone that says I spent altogether around 2 hours, I know if someone's racist after a little while. Yeah, it takes like half an hour to figure it out, and he is not racist. He's just a human being with a lot of responsibility on his head.
Yeah, but they don't understand this. This is the problem. You understand it because you've met him. You've taken time out to go and speak to him and spend time with him. And this is why I've heard this is quite funny, because I asked Rob in the beginning, what is there to hate about Tommy Robinson? I've even asked Rob, why is it that I'm starting to like the guy when I see that he is down to earth, that he is quite reasonable, and there is nothing to hate, even though I disagree strongly with his nationalist view. But that is it. Otherwise, there is nothing to hate. And I don't quite understand where this comes from, that people call him a Nazi, a racist, and all these things. I do not understand it. But this shows you that people are scared and therefore are coming up with shit.
I think people know he's not racist. I speak to people, they just use that word to shut down the conversation. If you say Islamophobe, it doesn't work. If you say this, it doesn't work. The only word that will shut it down is to say racist. This is why I'm hated so much at Speaker's Corner, because I'm a brown guy who wears a turban, who knows now Tommy Robinson, and I support him. And so because of that, I'm breaking that narrative, that false narrative. And this is why Muslims get so, if you read the comments against me, it's so disrespectful, the amount of hate I get just for speaking my mind. And it's because I'm breaking down that false narrative that Tommy Robinson is not racist. He has a right to defend his country. If it's being attacked and free speech is being eroded, I will do the same as well.
Perfect.
Okay, the second thing I want to say was that we should continue having these marches and demonstrations, because there is a vast silent majority of people that want to protect our civil liberties, and we have to be brave and continue these things. Okay, so this is related to Muhammad Hijab and people like him. It is narrated on the authority of Abdullah that the Messenger of Allah observed, "He who has in his heart the weight of a mustard seed of pride shall not enter paradise."
And on that
bombshell,
excellent note there, I want to thank our guests, the panelists, our regulars, obviously Stops and Abu, and to our guests, Steve and Raj. Thank you guys for coming on. We will be going into an after show. I will post the link into the chat there. If you want to join us in the after show, you're welcome. It will not be recorded on YouTube, so it will be a private hangout. If other people want to join, then you can do that. If you come on and you do not want to engage in a rational conversation, I will boot you out. So be aware of that. So thank you again to everybody. We will now end this broadcast and go into an after show. Thank you. We will be back next Friday, 8 p.m., same time. Thank you all. Good night, and see you next Friday.
Inshallah.
Good night.